This is the Evangelical Podcast.
Hello, welcome to Evangelical. My name is Mike Kelly. Thanks for listening. Over the last several weeks, we've explored leadership development. We heard from our friends at City to City about what God is doing around the world. And then last episode, we explored what we hope God will be doing here in the Northwest Church Planting Network through our leadership development pipeline. During that episode, we spoke of a profile that we've developed. It's called the ECCLESIA Leader Profile, and we're going to explore it today. The ECCLESIA Leader Profile is built to help parents and youth pastors and elders and pastors identify emerging leaders in our congregation, right in our midst. In 50 years, of course, the church will look like the leaders we develop today. We can do that accidentally, or we can do it on purpose. And the ECCLESIA Leader Profile is built to help us do that prayerfully and on purpose. Paul came also to Derbe and to Lystra, Acts chapter 16 tells us. A disciple was there named Timothy, the son of a Jewish woman who was a believer, but his father was a Greek. He was well spoken of by the brothers at Lystra and Iconium. We started to ask ourselves, why was he well spoken of? What did they see in him about his deportment, about his work, about his speech and his character that made them commend him to, of all people, the Apostle Paul? Well, of course, Paul himself wrote, as did the other prophets and apostles throughout the scriptures, about the characteristics that God calls leaders to, both gifts and the soul work that he expects them to do in their own lives through faith. We, of course, have explored those things ourselves. We've also aggregated our own experience, what we've identified in young leaders that we've helped along the way, and in ourselves when we were just entering into the discernment of call, and we've developed the ECCLESIA Leader Profile. Ecclesia is a Greek word that means gathering. In the New Testament, it's translated as church, and this acronym uses that framework to identify what young leaders look like. They begin as engaged. They're curious. In the first grouping, as we'll see, they're grouped in just a little bit in a few slides. They're correctable. The second grouping, or domain as we call it, we want to find people that lead, that have influence, that are effective and accomplish their goals and overcome setbacks. The last part of the profile is about intentionality and adaptability. Let's take a look at a little more detail about each one of those. The engaged are consistently in worship, community, and ministry. They're the people that like to be here, that are here because of a love and affection and enjoyment of the presence of the people of God. And once they're here, they ask questions about Scripture, about theology, about people, about how ministry gets to be done, because they want to know. They have a hunger and a curiosity about that. Those two things, by the way, are relatively easy to come by. So the third part of this first section of 3, as we're going to call them in a little bit, domains, is that these folks are correctable when they're instructed or coached or admonished. This is the beginning of the emergence of a mature character. Of course, leaders, obviously, they lead. They lead socially through relationship, or formally through position or title. But people want to know what they have to say. People want to be where they are. People want to do what they're doing. And they're effective. They accomplish their goals. They realize their objectives at school and personal governments or at home. And importantly, they have resilience. And when those objectives are obscured or blocked by providence or by some weakness in themselves, well, they overcome those and persevere. During this process all along, but it should be refined at the end, they have an intentionality about their own personal development and faith. And finally, leaders need to be adaptable because they'll need to change their life vocationally. Sometimes that happens at the very beginning of someone's vocational experience and exploration as a young person. Other times they move heaven and earth because God has put a call on their life. Well, as I said, we've broken down the Ecclesia profile into domains, and each domain has markers. Let's take a look at those. The domains are those categories that we spoke of earlier, the first three, the second three, and the last two. And markers are within those domains. They're indicators of where that person is so that we know which domain they're in and if they're developmentally ready or exhibiting characteristics of moving to the next. There's the presence domain. All these have to do with someone's contribution and presence in the community. There's the influence domain, where they affect change and realize their goals. And then finally, there's the commitment domain. Each one of these domains has markers. The identifying markers are those indicators that manifest the person's presence in one of those stations, one of those domains. And then the more substantive or definitive final marker in that domain we call a verifying marker, because this indicates that the person is maturing and developing and progressing along the Ecclesia Leader Profile. So let's take a look at the presence domain, the influence domain, and the commitment domain. The presence domain, as I said a moment ago, contains those first three letters in the Ecclesia profile. These are people that are engaged, they're curious. Those things, as we've said, are more common, but they're also correctable. That's the presence domain. The influence domain, we observe people who are affecting change and accomplishing goals in their community, either through title or just relational influence. People care about what they do and what they say and where they are, because God has given them a gift of leadership. Whether He's given them a title for that yet or not is different. Then we watch for these folks to see how they overcome challenges and setbacks. The resiliency of a leader is an essential part of the development of the church. And then the commitment domain is their intentionality to grow spiritually, to pursue godliness, wisdom, have a doctrinal maturity, and a personal commitment to their own faith. Then finally, can they adapt? Either can they move, as we've said, heaven and earth, to realize their calling once they've established perhaps a career or a home, or else can they begin a career as a young person in vocational ministry? Can they change course or commit to course economically and geographically? That's the Ecclesia profile. It's intended to help us identify and then walk with leaders as they discern a call. The diagram that's floating up now represents the beginning of that pathway. It's engagement, curiosity, and correctability. But as the illustration starts to manifest itself along the Ecclesia profile, we see influence. They lead, they're effective, and they're steadfast. And the illustration is indicating to us that this person's call is becoming more clearly discerned. Commitment is the final stage with its intentionality and adaptability. And together, they form for us a sense of call, where there is clarity and confirmation by the community around them. Because again, they've not been doing this in isolation, but they've been doing it in the ecclesia that they're manifesting these gifts and callings in. That's what we want to do. As we said in the last episode, this kind of thing is going to happen. It's going to happen by accident, or it's going to happen on purpose. It's going to happen here or somewhere else. And we're prayerfully committed, and we hope you will be with us as well, to help it happen here, right in our churches, right in our faith communities. These next slides I'm just going to introduce you to. We're not going to go through them in detail, but as this indicates here, they walk us through the stages of the Ecclesia profile, and they provide categories of exploration, 7 categories under each of the 7 elements of the Ecclesia profile, so that we can work either in our own heart or with our children or in our youth groups or in our college ministries or in our churches, so we can identify these leaders and help them discern where they are in this path and whether or not they should be exploring vocational ministry. We're excited about what God will do. We're excited about praying that God would raise up workers for the harvest, and then also working ourselves to ready those labors, to be part of answering those prayers. We want you to be part of that with us as well. You can pause this video and take a closer look at these elements and the categories for discussion and exploration. We'd love to hear from you. If you want a PDF of this so that you can look more closely, just reach out to us through the website and we'll send that to you right away. You can find out more about what God is doing through the Northwest Church Planting Network on our website. You can also find us at Evangelical. There's a tab there for that. And you can hear our podcasts and read our blog. We really want your prayers. We really want your eyes and ears open to help identify leaders right in your midst. Because as we saw last episode, this Sunday there was a 10-year-old kid. He was at church. He might not have been too engaged in what was happening. But one day he's going to be a pastor. She's going to be on a church planting team. One day they're going to be leading the church. We want to be there for them and with them to help them. We want you to be there with us too. Thanks so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. Evangelical is a ministry of the Northwest Church Planting Network in Seattle, Washington. If you would like to be notified of future podcasts, please visit nwcpnetwork.com and click Podcasts.